Good afternoon, Treaty 4, the 39 Chiefs. My name is Dave Bjorkman. I'm here to present to you today, this afternoon, something of great importance. Next slide, please. To begin with, Treaty 4 Chiefs, September 17th, today's date. Why that's important? In 6 days, we have a chance to do something great for all the peoples of Canada. But first, who am I? My name is Dave Bjorkman. For the last 3 years solid, I've been working diligently on trying to figure out what is wrong with Canada. Why does this system not seem to work for a vast majority of people, and no less than the First Nations and Inuit? Today I come to the Treaty Peoples, the Treaty Indian of Canada, to go over what I first did in Alberta, where I started, how I got on this path. It was the Alberta Independence Party. I ran for Premier of Alberta in a majority cast. A third-class citizen, a working Joe Jane, never been done before, for independence, or, more importantly, a platform that held the Treaty Indian, the Métis, and the Inuit in a real published platform, went out worldwide, saved forever. Now, it also led me to We the People, the PCC, Party of the Canadian Constitutionalists, a federal party I'm building right now to take us into the next election. Had Trudeau not called an early election, we would have been up and running and ready for 2023 with the platform across all of Canada. Next slide, please. So we're going to start at the beginning here. I show you Nelson Mandela. He is one of the elders of the UN. He's the founder of that. And I'm just going to read to you. Nelson Mandela served 27 years in prison for enacting decolonization in South Africa. His anti-colonial political movement started in 1943-44, following the fall of the UK in the Second Colonial War against Nazi Germany. Now, King George VI, the reigning monarch of the time, and Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill had to make many changes, many agreements worldwide, as they needed the Allies. Next slide, please. So, what birthed of that? Well, we end up with UNSC, United Nations Security Council, the 5 victorious allies, and it brings us to where we're at right now with South Africa. It was Communist Russia and China that enacted Resolution 418, specifically Chapter 7, and they voted it forward unanimously, meaning all members of the United Nations Security Council, the 5 chiefs of the world, brought that forward. Now, Nelson Mandela was released from prison in 1990, following the United Nations Security Council dissolving the Constitutional Act of South Africa. They destroyed the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the Labour parties. All of them, after an investigation, were found completely corrupt. They voted the election that predated that date and imposed a new constitution, a new way for the country to go forward. South Africa was imposed as a We the People and Supremacy of God, with 12 indigenous languages added to the English-only nation. The country was fully democratic, and Nelson Mandela served just 1 term to see all the people of South Africa free and prosperous. The true history no Treaty Indian or Canadian has ever seen or read. Next slide, please. So, we have the United Nations Permanent 5 Chiefs of the World. Now, who is that? From World War II, that's Russia, USA, China, UK, France, They are the victorious allies of World War II, aka the Colonial War #2. Since 1945, the five powers have completed decolonization around the globe, most notably Africa. Today, out of 205 nations, only 16 remain. And you know who the worst is? That's right, Canada. Next slide, please. So the UNSCP5, what do? They make all international binding laws. You can't get a veto from any one of them, or the law is thrown in the garbage worldwide. They can execute any perceived threat to peace and security. To date, just in Africa alone, UNSC members have executed 22 African presidents on regimes that committed genocides, much the same as the Treaty Indian here in Canada. They can also impose sanctions, embargoes, and military intervention. They can enter countries when they vote that forward. They define human, civil, political, social, and economic rights worldwide. They define them and they enact them. Have the highest court in the world, the ICC, that is the International Criminal Court. Next slide, please. So here we got International Criminal Court, ICC, that is USA, China, Russia, UK, and France can refer any case in the world they choose to the ICC, and that is the worst cases of genocide. Why we are here today. That is the only court that the Treaty Indians can go to. And with the residential school genocide, that matches the worst cases of genocide. The judgment of the ICC is binding on all UN states signatory or of the ICJ, International Court of Justice. Next slide, please. International Court of Justice, I know you've all heard this word, as what you think Treaty Indians have been in, is the ICJ. Now, what is that? Well, there's the UN stamp. Here's the stamp of the United Nations Security Council, the real court. And it's right here as you go down in UN.org website, you find the International Court of Justice. It's in the UN structure. It's part of the 6 principal organs of the UN. Canada quit ICJ back in 1993. Why did they do that? Because of what you're going to learn about South Africa. Next slide, please. So we have International Court of Justice Canada. It's ICJ. Look, ICJ. And you read, as the Canadian branch of the Geneva-based International Commission of Jurists, ICJ Canada. International Commission of Jurists. Well, what is that? That's Canada's fake ICJ. It's an International Commission of Jurists. When you look that up right here, you find out is a non-governmental organization, an NGO, meaning Canada's for Hire built court, so that nobody in Canada, not one Treaty Indian or any First Nation persons, could ever go to the real ICJ. Instead, they go to an NGO hired by the government. Every case in all of Canada, whether Treaty Indian, Métis, Inuit, or Canadian, has never ever gone to the real International Court of Justice. They've never heard any of us. And on their website, when you go to the real International Court of Justice worldwide, you find out Canada's never had a single case ever administered there. In fact, only one case, it was another country bringing us there. Next slide, please. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my promise to the Alberta Treaty Indians. This was done in 2019 and it led up to my work today. Back in 2019, for Treaties 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10, this is the Treaty 4 overlap from Saskatchewan to Alberta and the Treaty 10 overlap to Alberta. I provided in my platform self-government, self-determination, and full settlement of the claims. The 3 S's. To get there, I had to learn every UN binding law. I had to learn the Charter of 1945, law of sovereignty, the absolute law that gives everybody sovereignty, every nation, and all peoples of the world. Do you think Treaty Indians have sovereignty? They don't. I learned the Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. I learned the 1948 Convention on the Crime and Prevention of Genocide, the 1960 Declaration granting independence to all colonial countries and peoples. Did you guys get independence? 1966 International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. These binding laws right here have been signed and ratified by Canada, every single one. But you know what? They have breached every single one with the Treaty Indian since absolutely Canada's inception, to the point that they were completely independent of the UK and the UK Crown in absolutely 1952 until today. Next slide, please. We got Treaty Indian and history, and I started here as I went through Canada. 1876 Indian Act, sections 115 A, B, C, and D. And you know what you find there? A complete disclosure right there from that day forward of the genocide of the Treaty Indian. And that's your act that was bound to you way back in 1876 over all treaty lands. And what does it say? It says they can take your children by force. They can punish your children. They can hire any church, all church under the state to administer any punishments or oversee any Indian child, whether the parents like it or not. Completely in contravention of world binding laws, a complete human rights violation. Going up these 2 points to 2014 and onward in the territories till right now. The government of Canada's genocide from absolutely 1952 till present day. In 1952, King George VI passed away, but not before he had removed UK and the Crown absolutely from Canada. In 1945, the Allies, under the Charter of the UN, 1945, abolished all Crown over any countries. It is forbidden from any country, including the UK, from governing any other nation, which Canada's Constitution clearly breaches that. The current Indian Act completely breaches that. And like I said, it's been your Canadian politicians who stole the crown in 1952, Liberals and Conservatives, and from there on every party has enacted genocide on all of you. We have Indian school genocide hidden from the UNSC P5, ICJ, the Real International Court of Justice, and the ICC, International Criminal Court, highest court of the P5, the last chance. In 1984, UNSC moves in on South Africa with the Real ICJ. They start hammering them with International Criminal Code. You know what Canada does in 1985? Rewrites the Canadian Criminal Code, forced on South Africa from the ICJ, from the Allies of World War II. Canada runs from that, makes their own criminal code. Oh, look at us. We've implemented all these things. From that day forward, more Indians ended up in jail than any other minority group in Canada or any other ethnic group in Canada, majority or not, by a large margin. Did you know that Canada put in all of these international rights in the criminal code? However, decolonization, completely illegal, upwards of 10 years in prison. When decolonization is mandatory international law, it's in this, hidden from the Allies, as they say, oh look, we added genocide. Do you know what the crime of genocide comes with? 6 months to 5 years maximum. When you work out the sentences, people could do as little as 2 months in a Canadian jail, even on a maximum over genocide in the Canadian Criminal Code. However, decolonization could land you 10 years. In world binding law, according to the ICJ history, as you all may have heard from Nuremberg and many other trials, the crime of genocide comes with the death penalty. What was administered in residential schools by the government, by politicians, alive and well today, from every party, Liberal, Conservative, NDP, Bloc, the list goes on and on. There's not a good one in the bunch. In 1993, South Africa, multi-parties destroyed. The UNSC moves in, destroys all the political parties of South Africa. Couldn't find a good one after that investigation over that period of time from Nelson Mandela in 1990 to 1993. UNSC, under that 418 resolution, Chapter 7, moves in with the ICJ's recommendations, destroys the political parties. Canada quits the ICJ after South Africa's demise in this ICJ. Constitution scrapped, parties scrapped, a new imposed constitution by communist countries, but the law of sovereignty dictate the people get to decide. They decide full democracy. Nelson Mandela was no communist. He went full democratic because that's what the people wanted. They wanted freedom, as all people want freedom. And Canada was so scared. The Liberals who were in power at the time, I should say the criminal code led up to this by the Conservatives and their friends, the Liberals, in 1994, walk away from the International Court of Justice, quitting binding laws of the UN to administer their own. Canada creates the fake ICJ. All human rights cases go to fake Canadian kangaroo court. Treaty Indians sent to the fake ICJ, International Commission of Jurists, an NGO, a non-governmental organization hired by the Canadian government to protect the Canadian government from any real accountability whatsoever. Next slide, please. So the Treaty Indian solution, everybody, we got one. Well, I'm going to start with in 2019, I spent 2 days with 49 chiefs of Alberta. I made a promise I kept, and now I'll present to you today. Day 2 was with Perry Bellegarde, who was at the time the national chief. He was to give my presentation to the Overlap Treaty 4 chiefs. If you didn't get it, you can pick up the phone and call Perry Bellegarde. Spent a whole day with him in front of all the Alberta chiefs. So one, my promise, I would share the international stage with the First Peoples, Treaty Indian, Métis, and Inuit, with the Canadian second and third class, which I've done now and you're going to learn about. 2, I would free all the peoples. First Nations would get first choice. You can read the platform. It was in there. 3, I would see real justice. I would go to the real court. After 2 years of touring every major university of law in every major country, I have assembled the greatest constitutional experts in the world to deliver just that for all of you. And now the fruition of the other works. So the ICC, the International Criminal Court, I've spent 2 years with them, completely educated in all their history, trained by the former president, former Crown prosecutors, and many more of the former Supreme Justices of the ICC. I was trained I went through courses. I completed that this year. I also created 700 plus exhibits on the Canadian government, both regionally and federally, guilty of residential school genocide. That's your NDP, that's your Liberal, that's your Conservative, that's your Bloc, and the list goes on and on and on. Every elected politician. I met the P5 correspondents and study as well as they've assisted me. They've assisted me on massive documentation I had never ever seen before. No Canadian or Treaty Indian has ever seen. I'm currently building a federal party, the PCC, Party of the Canadian Constitutionalists, with a full Treaty Indian, seated, unseated platform, as well as the Métis, the Inuit, and the overlap of Treaty Indians in the Arctic Council, removed from you in this current Canada. Next slide, please. So, the Treaty Indian solution. What do we got here? And we're right back to Nelson Mandela. You understand the concept of the elders? Nelson Mandela created the elders. They're an attachment to absolutely the UNSC P5. Massive human rights. South Africa is what got them there. Right now, today, we have Mary Robinson, who's the official chair of the elders, taken over for the late Nelson Mandela. She's Irish. The history of the Irish overlaps absolutely the Treaty Indians, their history and what they went through. And right now, in this month, it is Ireland's presidency of the UN Security Council. We have Decolonization coming September 23rd with the UNSC P5 at 8 a.m., a debate. Treaty Indians have a voice. Will you, the chiefs, add your name? Email me, Dave, vjbjorkman@gmail.com. The organizer of you is Lynn. She has my email. You can sign on. It is you who can save the Canadian Indian, and it is you who can also save the second and third class Canadian citizen. A platform, a political will that will move every Canadian in your favor. We can settle this country. We can all have what we want. We can do it together, and we can get justice for those children. The one and only case in Canada that can be heard in the ICC. We don't get, with this regime of Canada in any of the political parties, we don't get the International Court of Justice because Canada quit. And I want you all to know USA, UK, and all the UNSC and many UN states are all in the ICJ, and they all recognize or at least administer the ICC. It is only rogue Canada that wants nothing to do with any of this or the ICJ, and because of that, there is only one case in Canada right now, and it's the Treaty Indian Genocide from Residential Schools Canada. It goes long into the present, it overlaps every party, and can get what Nelson Mandela did for South Africa done right here for Canada. That's one of the avenues, avenue we need you for right now. Thank you, that is my presentation. And now without further ado, I'm going to bring to you one of your own, Tina Maravich, the love of my life, my partner, a Treaty 4 Indian, who wishes to address all of you. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Tina Maravich. My maiden name was Tina Crow. I'm here to tell you about my journey on the case we presented to the UNSC P5 on Children's Day of Genocide on June the 6th, 2021. Our first interaction was the ICC presenting Dave's case of residential school genocide in Canada. Karim Khan, the ICC prosecutor, had accepted it. On June 28th, 2021, the UNSC rep for China, Zheng Jun, accepted our work and for the first time presented the Indian residential school genocide. Canada is now registered with the worst top 10 genocidal countries in the world. Over the next year, we need to now join the Elder Council of the UN attached to the UNSC P5, Russia, France, UK, China, and USA. Please drop all combined cases that include the US. We cannot combine the cases as the US has been settling with the American Indians since 1924. I addressed the UNSC P5 on August the 1st, World Constitution Day, as a Treaty Indian, Treaty 4 Indian, and China accepted our resolution with a path forward and are analyzing it now. We need you to join us for the love of our children and the next 7 generations. Let's fix what was and is being done to our children today. We can put a stop to Canada's genocide on treaty people once and for all. We can prosper on our lands that Canada calls federal crown lands and provincial crown lands by use of colonialism. We can come together like the strength of the braids, of our braids, and be stronger if you stand beside me. Come together and help me right the wrongs of the past so that we can thrive as a people. The UNSC P5 have never known a Treaty Indian existed until now because Canada has hidden their genocide so well. Let's show them who we are. Thank you. Gachimigud. Gachimigwak.